So it's the off season. It's that time of year where every basketball player is going to be looking to get in shape, whether it's for the season, whether it's just to play pickup, whatever it may be. The game's a lot easier when you can get up and down the court and not get tired every few possessions. So I'm going to give you guys some practical tips that you can add into your conditioning work, to your skills workouts, to make sure that you're in shape pretty much year round. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that we still have to be very active in actually playing basketball, playing the game. I talk to a lot of players who take 3 to 4 months off from actually playing, or at least they don't play as much. They work on their skills, they condition themselves, and they come back and they wonder why they feel out of shape. Answer to that is that basketball is a crazy, dynamic, chaotic, physical game, and it's hard to replicate that with anything else. So whether it's 3-on-3, whether it's 5-on-5, whether it's even just full court 1-on-1, actually playing the game is huge because now you have the contact involved. Now all of your skills are involved. Now you're moving in all the different directions and reacting to defenders. So again, take all these things, apply it, but make sure that you're still hooping, and that's where you get the majority of your conditioning. Let's get to it. So first off, we got to make sure that our conditioning work isn't just straight lines. I see it a lot of the time, the old standard or traditional conditioning method, suicides, up and down, 17s. These ones you're just running straight. And when you look at the game of basketball, it's not played just straight forward and back. You're moving in different directions, laterally, diagonally, running in curves, switching these different directions. So our conditioning should probably mirror that. Plus, science shows when you are doing conditioning in different directions, it actually eats up more energy. So you actually have to do less and spend less time on your conditioning if you're moving in different directions, because it's simply gonna tire you out quicker. So simple fixes here, I could literally, instead of just going forward and back, sprinting here, down and back. Now I could go, when I get to the half court, I switch, I come back, I'm backpedaling, maybe I get into a crossover. So now, even if I only have a certain amount of space to work with, or a narrow space, I can still move in these different planes of movement, right? I can work in curves too. So whether this is kind of the top of the key, whether this is the circle at the middle of the court, I wanna make sure that I'm also working in these kind of curvilinear angles. So here, right, sprinting around, I can backpedal in this curve. But again, I'm working in all these different angles that you actually see in a game, so that when you do get into the game, it's gonna be a lot easier for that conditioning to transfer. Second idea here is that I want your conditioning to be maybe not fun, but engaging sometimes, and you're actually working towards a goal. A lot of the time we just step outside or onto the track, we run a mile, we don't really time it, we don't really compete. We're not actually engaged in that task. Same thing with suicides, right? We're just like, all right, I'm gonna run through this, see how many I can do until I'm tired. But realistically, if we're actually working towards something, or we're competing against ourselves, we're gonna do it for longer. So maybe if I'm doing a shooting drill, right, where I'm moving around the 3-point line, I gotta make a shot, get my own rebound, kind of sprint back out, make another shot, see how quickly I can get 5. In this exercise, I'm clearly fatiguing myself. I'm clearly getting conditioning, but I'm also working towards something, trying to beat a time or a score. I guess you could say just hooping or playing pickup is another easy example. Think about myself, sometimes I hoop for 2 to 3 hours, and I know for damn sure I'm not going out and just conditioning myself for 2 to 3 hours. That's because it's fun, that's because I'm competing, and that's because I'm actually working on a task, which is playing basketball. So start thinking of conditioning as more than just sprinting, right? Again, you're moving multi-directionally, and you're also able to add in games to this, add in competitions to this, to make it a lot more engaging. Next one here, I want to think about energy systems. So we have 3 energy systems as humans. I'm not going to use all the scientific terminology. All you got to understand is we have kind of the longer energy system here, which is going for, you know, a 1, 2, 3, 4 mile run. On the other side of that, we have our super short-term energy system. So this is really just like 5-second bouts of energy. You're really sprinting as fast as you can for just, you know, 2 or 3 seconds, a 40-yard dash type thing. And then in the middle, we have basketball, right? It's kind of played in between those two ends of the spectrum. This is called the anaerobic energy system. There's some stopping and starting, but at some points we are going for 30 seconds to a minute. So a lot of our conditioning should be in this energy system. However, I do want you to cover the 2 other ends of the spectrum, because there will be times, again, where you're really exerting yourself for just 3 or 4 seconds on a sprint. Maybe a chase down block, maybe the last play of a game or a quarter, you really got to move fast. And then the other side, so over here, that longer term energy system, games are hour and a half, 2 hours long sometimes. So being able to recover and be fresh for that 4th quarter also depends on this side over here. So I would say the rule of thumb here, without kind of making it too complicated, is spending most of the time in here, I would say half of the time in this anaerobic system, and then spending 25% here and 25% here in your training. So maybe 1 out of every 4 of your workouts, you go for kind of a longer run or do something that's a little bit longer of an activity. Then maybe a quarter of your workouts, you do super short-term sprints. So maybe like you're doing a 3/4 court sprint, walking back, resting a minute, and you're getting these really short bouts. Then the rest of it kind of sits in this middle ground. Last really practical tip right here is that your conditioning can include skills. And actually you probably should, because realistically you can be the most in shape person in the gym, but if you don't know how to execute skills when you're tired, it's probably not going to show up in that 4th quarter of a game. If you think about it, your skills are literally different skills sometimes when you're tired.
Sometimes when you're tired, you have to shoot it differently, right? Because you're in a completely different, your body's in a completely different environment. So maybe you're coming here, usually you would kind of hang and shoot. Maybe now you shoot a little bit on the way up, or you're kind of making these adjustments, because in a game you're going to be tired and you're going to have to know how to work with that, kind of using different techniques.
You're not going to jump as high on your jump shot. You may have to move a little bit slower and figure out how to play through contact a little bit more. You may have to play a little bit more under the rim rather than getting up and elevating there, because you're just not getting up as high. So I want you guys to get comfortable with these things, performing these skills in a fatigued state. Now, I don't want you to always be performing these in a fatigued state. I still think you should do the bulk of your training when you're a little bit more fresh, because that's how it's going to be for the most part in the game. But this is an easy way to, number one, get good at skills when you are tired, and number two, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can go for longer, it's more fun when you're actually shooting and handling the ball and finishing at the rim, and you're working on these skills and conditioning yourself without having to do the 2 separately. And then the last big question I'll ask you is, how much conditioning do you really need? If you're already dead tired after your skills workouts, after doing open runs for the day, do you really need to condition even more? The answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I think the big thing to understand here is that every day you shouldn't be pushing yourself to your limit. What I would suggest doing is doing kind of an every other day thing. So maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you really do push yourself. If you finish your workouts for the day, you're hooping, whatever it may be, and you say, all right, I exerted 6 out of 10 for today. Well, maybe you want to supplement that with kind of a 3 or 4 out of 10 conditioning workout. Then Tuesday, you actually step away from it. You can do something a little bit longer, maybe a mile or 2 run, preferably just something lighter on the skill side. Then Wednesday, you go back to high intensity. Thursday, you come down to low intensity. Friday, you go back to high intensity. This way, you're actually giving your body a chance to recover and actually make these gains. And then with this is making sure that you're ramping up, right? So let's say you finish your season, you take a little break. What a lot of players do is they jump straight back into that highest point. They're like, oh, I was in shape a month or 2 ago. I'm good to jump back into that super intense work schedule. Don't do this, trust me. I promise you, I don't care how in shape you think you are. It's always smarter to ramp up. You don't want to end up with knee pain. You don't want to end up with a more acute injury. So ramp it up, start low, and then continue to progress from there. So hopefully this gave you guys some tips that you can go and train in your off season with, and come back to whatever it may be, and come back to your season or whatever it may be, just feeling more in shape and like you can compete for 4 quarters with pretty much anybody. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to stay tuned for a lot more.